On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Peter Kapur. He is the head of data governance and data quality at CarMax. We're going to be talking about data governance for data offense. I know a lot of times data governance has an image and view of being a defensive position. We're going to talk about Peter and see his views of what the differences are and how do you combine the strategies? Obviously, he's an expert, and I'm excited to have him on to talk about data governance. Peter, thanks for being on the show.
All right, thanks so much for allowing me to discuss the topic I have a passion for over the years.
Awesome. Let's start off at the top to get a little context of your background and who you are. Obviously, I'm sure people know what CarMax does, but just tell us what CarMax does as a business, and also what are some of the responsibilities you have at a high level as the head of data governance and data quality?
So, as people know, CarMax revolutionized the car industry. And we've got an omni model in terms of how we sell cars. We have proprietary models, how we price cars, how we buy cars, and we have a totally differentiated model in terms of guarantee to our customers. My responsibility is to see how we can make data as an asset and drive the business. I look at it from the perspective of how do we drive better profitability, better customer experience, better associate experience with data. Part of the responsibilities are also to do privacy, but that is as we'll talk further, that's a small component. That's the defense part of it. But I'm trying to change the mindset even here at CarMax is that how do we start thinking about data governance as an offensive weapon for the business.
You got a good background on this. So if there's anyone that's going to talk to us about data governance, I'm glad it's you. And I do like the angle, right? I know a lot of times when we talk about data governance, we talk about even cybersecurity components. We're always talking about a defensive component, reactionary. I know you have some different views of how data governance can be used instead of being defensive, but maybe at just the highest level, just to make sure everyone understands the context. Talk to us about what you mean in terms of data governance and being either offensive or defensive.
I divide data governance into defensive as in things that you're required to do from a regulatory or legal perspective, which is narrowly privacy, legal, cybersecurity. Anything beyond that is data offense because it's hitting your bottom line. You don't have to do it. For example, people think of data quality as defense. No. Yeah, good data quality is good, but you invest in it because it will save you money or it will make you money. That is not the case on the defense. And the reason I try to distinguish that is, as data governance started around 2008, et cetera, in the financial, it was all geared towards defense, right? The banks were falling apart. So it was all about the defense, regulations and all. And the whole perception of data governance kept being more, it's a top-down defensive mechanism to keep the regulators at bay. But as things evolved to data science, analytics, consumer-oriented, outside the financial, realize data governance has a lot of capabilities that enable analytics and data science. So the mindset really needs to start changing that there is a very important component of defense, privacy and legal and all. But that is something that is limited. And from a company perspective, if you do that 5 times better than the next person, you're not getting a price for it. Right? You need to meet your obligations there. But on the offense side is where that gets people excited to say, you're going to give me better data quality. You are going to make my data have meaning. I'll be able to discover my data better. I'll be able to know the lineage of my data. That's why I talk about capabilities to solve a problem. I look at it, if you don't have a problem, don't solve it. And a lot of times data governance comes across as a enterprise mechanism trying to find problems to solve because we have a framework. I look at it specifically to let me understand the problem, let me apply the data governance capabilities to it. That's why I very much, when I first go into companies, I try to help people what my vision of data governance as an offensive enabler is. So that they're not looking at it as you're coming in as a cop or a regulator.
So you mentioned data quality, and I guess your title has both data governance and data quality. And you mentioned obviously the offensive opportunity is better quality data, which obviously the data science and the BI and analytics teams are all going to take advantage of. When you're looking at, let's say, where data quality sits within the context of companies and where data governance sits, how close do they sit with each other? What you've seen across, your experiences.
More and more data quality is intricately part of the data governance. In the past, I've seen it where there's a data governance group and there's a data quality group separately. The reason you do data governance, one primary reason is data quality. Data quality makes your data governance tangible. Otherwise, data governance becomes a set of policies and procedures.
I guess when you look at opportunities, right? So data quality obviously is a problem for organizations. And you see, obviously, the reason why people start data governance, right? I mean, GDPR, CCPA, I mean, these are common reasons why people start into the governance component to be, have the label that they've done it and they've done it right. And they're abiding by the policies. The shift from defense to offense, or the mindset shift, is that common? How do you have that conversation? Where do you start? Because a lot of people, obviously, when they think about governance, think about these privacy laws and they're like, well, we got to be compliant. So we got to put that, tick that box.
But you have to tick the box. But that's why I distinguish it. It's not one is more important than the other. You have to say data governance is beyond the defensive. You can't take the mindset of defensive to offense. Even during defense, my mind always is, if we meet the laws, we meet the regulations, we meet legal, how do we leverage our data? It's a mindset shift versus, let me lock my data down, no use it. I look at it from an aspect, how can I use the data while ensuring that we meet all the regulations? And the offense side, what you're really looking at is the difference between the mindset of defense and offense is when you're going defense, it's a top-down view. You're telling people you must do this, right? So you don't have to motivate people per se. When you're actually going for offense, you actually have to motivate people that it's going to help them. It's going to help them make money, save money, do their projects better, etc. So that mindset has to be a partnership, collaboration, not top-down. How do you solve their problem? You may use the same mechanism. It's a mindset to understand. You have to understand the problem. The defensive part of it, sometimes you're not fully understanding it because you say, okay, I've got a framework, I'm going to use it.
Is this an enterprise-only problem? Is this something that smaller businesses should be focused on as a startup software company? I mean, what size business needs to tackle this? Obviously, a lot of people are tackling the defensive side from what you've said, but when it comes to the offensive side, is this applied to everyone, different size companies? Is it reserved for larger companies that are having other issues that obviously this will help them with?
No, I don't think so. But I think larger companies, because they have larger budgets, can optimize their spend on data governance by thinking of it more, how do I do things versus how do I not do things? How do I enable the business by using data governance? Smaller companies don't have that luxury of perhaps spending a few $1 million and saying, yeah, it didn't work. They don't have the luxury. But I think the mind, it truly is a mindset. And there has been a mindset shift. When it started in data governance, then a dozen years back, I was probably the black sheep there. I used to work at DTCC, which was very highly regulated. But I still told them, you need to use analytics. So you need to think, how can we use that data?
If you're a company and you're listening to this and you're like, well, we've got the defensive side down and this sounds great. We need to have an offensive strategy in play for data quality and the governance piece. Where would that person start? Are there any basic steps, any low-hanging fruit that they should go look at? Where would someone start on this?
First thing I would do is don't take your frameworks to your business. You don't want to take the mindset of defensive, which is policy and rules oriented, to your business. You actually want to go there and show them the set of capabilities that you have and understand their data problems. So you have to spend a lot of time actually listening, understanding data problems, digging their data problems, so you're speaking the language and you're coming back and saying, you know what, we can help you with this. But try to keep the terminology of data geeks out of this. And I'm a data geek too, but it tends to, because I'm a big believer in, I've seen people say that the business needs to be data literate. I disagree. They've got a full-time job. Don't send them to data school. We should be going to a business school. So I would say, make sure that you're really speaking the language of the business, even if what you're doing is the plumbing of data governance. And make sure that you are not sticking to a one-size-fits-all regimen. You have to go with an open mind. You're solving a problem. You're not imposing anything. Because I've seen a lot of time people say, I've got this framework, it's going to do so and so. But as soon as you start telling people I've got a framework, the people in the room start saying, wait, they already know what the solution is? They haven't listened to the problem? So that reminds us, try to keep away your jargon framework as much as possible.
When you talk about, I guess as you're trying to, you're talking about ROI and budgets and how you're going to get it. You're going to get approval. What are some of the, obviously telling people, data quality is going to improve, their ears perk up. That's good for business. The cost you mentioned, you gotta make the investment. What are some of the compelling, points of establishing that ROI to get that budget approved?
I think it's trying to find some tangible value. Where you're improving, maybe you're improving the customer progression. You'll get more customer wins. Less time accessing data. You can always quantify that. Perhaps you're not losing customers because of that. So if you can quantify that, and the same thing goes for tools. We as an industry are famous for telling people this is a tool and you must use it. So, it's more about finding how the tool would solve specific problems. And by that time, you already have the ROI of the problems that are there. Most of the problems you can solve with probably less sophisticated tools, and it takes time. But you can prove that out and then buy tools that are more sophisticated, but with a plan for adoption. And as soon as your reputation becomes that you're looking to actually partner with the business, that budget discussion becomes much easier.
I guess the other component to that, you mentioned adoption, and obviously, there's a framework people have to follow, process. When you're looking at the adoption side, maybe talk to us about what you've seen work and where you've seen adoption fall short.
Yeah, as I said, I stay away from the framework model as much as possible. That's the standard because sometimes it comes across one size fits all. So what it generally done is from adoption of tools, processes. If it's beneficial to the business, they will adopt it. If you're making it part of their normal process, they'll adopt it. If you make it easy for them to use, they'll adopt it. If you tell them you have to go here and get 2 days worth of training, they won't. It's got to be natural. And I always look at it. To me, if I look at I should be able to go in the morning. I should be able to look at my data issues because that's going to help me. So therefore, I will use the tool. I'm going to find something. I'll use the tool. Not because there's a process to say you must use a password. And there is also ways to design tools such that they are personalized. The personalization of tools is important. When I mean personalization of roles, the data that I need, what does it mean to me? At the end of it, you got to keep that old Seinfeld thing, it's not about me, it's about you.
I like that. I guess when you're looking at that mindset shift and, you're trying to, put in processes in place. Obviously, you mentioned, benefiting the data science, the analytics teams. Kind of touched on, that relationship and the partnership with the people that actually are consuming the data to, produce what they need to do.
You have to look at everybody as data citizens and as equal participants in data governance, which means that the consumers in data science, business reports, they're active participants in saying, what do we need? How do we need it? How can data governance, how can data access give us better data faster? And you have to really listen to them because data quality is in the eye of the consumer. Because if you don't get good data, your data science models will not give the right output. You'll not be able to run the right analytics, or you don't have the access to data. So that's where a lot of things you have to focus. So that's why these days data governance is actually embedded in analytics. There are fewer firms that are having it as an enterprise, as a overall enterprise data governance.
Do you have any advice, for somebody who's new to trying to implement the data offensive strategy? Any advice of, what step one is? I know you kind of gave us some ideas of low hanging fruit, but I think people always, it's starting things are hard. But I mean, you don't maybe need a formal data governance person, maybe within the analytics team or the data team. They could see an opportunity to put in some principles. What do you think would be good advice for that kind of person?
I think the one thing would be try to solve a problem. Find the problems that data governance can solve. Don't look at it as a framework that you're going to take, which means understanding the business problems and digging into it and saying, yeah, that helps you build credibility with the business. And also really think outside the box. If you're going to solve a problem, you cannot always look at frameworks. You have to think about what's the problem, how am I going to solve it? But a lot of times I get in there and say, hey, I find, wait a minute, now we need to look at it differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because otherwise what ends up happening is you're taking a solution that's not really fitting the problem.
It's a problem a lot of companies are facing, and I think you gave some pretty good actionable steps and some of the reasons of why. Obviously, moving into the data offensive side of governance is going to help companies not only just compliance, but actually adding value and providing a different type of ROI. So I appreciate you coming on, sharing. If somebody wants to reach out to you and pick your brain on this subject, because you got a great background with it, how would somebody get a hold of you?
Sure. They can reach me through LinkedIn, or they can get my email, peter.kapur@gmail.com. I'm always happy to share thoughts, mentor anybody. Be happy to do that. I think data and data governance is very exciting, especially if you look at it as innovative, enabling, and data offense.
Absolutely. We'll definitely include that in the show notes to make sure anyone can get a hold of you. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Amir.